In the last video we studied Euler's method, and as a result of approximating the y of x function, we obtained a piecewise linear function with three parts, again, that ended up looking like this. Okay, so our approximation was off, and so our goal in this video is to talk about and hopefully obtain a better approximation of the y of x function. Okay, so again, our goal is to accurately approximate y of x. Here, this approximation is okay if there's no other approximation available, but if we have numerical tools and approximation techniques available to us, we should try and use them as much as we can to obtain a better solution. And so one approximation technique that we're going to utilize is we are going to try and decrease the step size that we use in Euler's method, which or increasing the number of steps. And if we remember, we can jump back here. If we increase the number of steps, dividing by a larger number decreases this. And if we just decrease this in general, that ends up being the same thing. Okay, so the technique we're going to utilize throughout this entire thing is what we call the method of successive approximations. And the idea of this is that if we increase the number of steps gradually, so we say do one step and then two steps and then three steps and four steps, five steps, etc. We will have a better idea of how the function changes, the behavior of the function both locally and globally, and eventually we will be able to be sufficiently close to the exact function. And by sufficiently close, that means that it looks almost identical from a just first glance point of view. Again, there may be variation from the actual function, but at a certain point, we don't. The approximation is good enough to be exact. Okay, and again, remember the notation we're going to use is yj of t, y sub j of t, and this means the approximation to y of x with j steps. Okay, so again, if we form what we call a sequence of approximation. So we start with one, like I said before. Really, what the method again says is that if we increase the number of steps without bound, that will give us the exact function. Okay, so really what we're saying here is, and just graphically, if we have our y of x function, if we increase the number of steps, so this is just going from 3 to 6 steps, shown here, we get significantly closer to the exact function. And if we were to increase this again, we'd be even closer. Okay, so that's kind of the idea of successive approximations. Now, in theory, that takes a lot of computation, and so that's why we utilize computers for this stuff. And like using Excel, that's a great tool. Not as powerful as some other tools available, but still a good tool. And so if we do this improved approximation, like I said, we get better behavior locally and globally. And in global behavior, we actually, one thing we talk about is the end behavior. So, and again, this is described here, and we talked about it way back in Module 0 too. And so the end behavior, if it approaches one value, we call that value the limit or the stabilization value. In the context of biology, it's also called the carrying capacity. So the idea is, and this is a little bit of mathematical notation, so we say the limit as x goes to infinity as x increases without bound of y of x is c. Now you could also have decreases without bound, that would just be a minus infinity. Alright, and we'll see more of this notation in upcoming videos and modules, but the idea is it's just telling us the end behavior, what happens to y of x as x gets extremely large. And if it does have a limit or a stabilization value, it should approach one value. So an example here is this is if you recognize this function, it's the graph of a logistic function. This is our graph of y of x. So we see that as x increases, it gets very, very close to 500. And granted, it only goes up to 20, but if you were to follow this all the way out, it does not cross 500, it approaches it. Okay, so again, we say the limit is 500. One important note is that the limit, it doesn't actually ever reach 500, but it gets extremely close. So it could be something like 499.999 and 509s after that, but it will never actually reach 500. Okay, so that is a brief description of how we can improve our approximations and the consequences that come from improving our approximations. All right.